Open up the door, it's Dave! Who?
Hey everyone, it's Dave. Welcome to another episode of Just What Do You Think You're Doing, Dave? So today I wanted to talk to you about what an engineer is and does. Look, there's a textbook definition for an engineer. There's some things you can think about. Engineer comes from the same Latin root as ingenious. So there's a lot to be said for that. It's kind of applying some smarts in some way. You can think about it in terms of the fact that you're solving problems. You're looking at the world. You're exploring things. You're using the scientific method. You want to just understand and approach things and solve problems. Engineers are problem solvers at the heart of it. We sit there and we try to figure things out. We try to understand what's going on in the world. When you see something, can I solve that problem? I'm going to talk to you on this video series going forward about different problems that I see in the world, things that I see every day, where I can talk to you about how engineering applies to that. So my simplest example, one of the things, you're a problem solver, right? What kinds of problems can you solve? Sometimes it's a very simple problem. My dryer stopped heating up, just my clothes dryer. And I know that a clothes dryer is actually a very simple device. It has a roller that goes around, and inside that you put your clothes. And there's a heating element down in the bottom that heats up. It's a coil that actually heats up when you electrify it. And as the heating element goes past it, it's heating the drum, and that drum keeps getting hot on the edges, and it heats the clothes inside. That's it. And to keep the heating element on and to keep it safe, there's a couple of fuses, there's a thermal resistor, and there's a couple of thermostats. And those devices all go in line with each other, and they kind of line up with the wires. If you look at a diagram of a dryer, you can see how easy it is. They just connect up to each other. And if one goes out of sync, one thing stops working, the whole dryer stops heating because it's a safety measure. It's that simple. So the key is to figure out which of those things went bad and replace it. Now, for one of the first problems is, okay, that I know that piece to it. How the heck do I get my dryer apart? And that's where having the dryer manual online, going to it, using the interwebs to your advantage, and then going out there and actually looking up how to take it apart using a YouTube video will really help you to understand it. So I was able to unscrew part of it and get to the components I was looking for. And then really, they're all just, they're fuses, they're thermal resistors, and they're thermometers. And each one of them should have no resistance to it. If you touch it with a voltmeter on the resistance setting, it should let a little bit of current flow through. So you should see that it's connected. It's like touching the 2 voltmeter pieces together. But if it doesn't, that means that piece is damaged. It's that simple to test it. So I went through and tested each of the pieces and found out which one was bad. And I actually got a new one and replaced it. Took it out, replaced it. Now, I'm not going to say that replacing it was actually easy. Sometimes these things take a little time and it takes a little physical effort to do it. But it's entirely possible because all I had to do was figure out what the problem was. It's not heating up. And then find a solution to that problem. Well, why is it not heating up? And go through that. And the cool part about being an engineer is we solve problems. That's what we do. We find the problem, we define up what that actual problem is, and then we find a solution to it. That's what we do. And sometimes it's a little harder than that, and sometimes it's that easy. My maternal grandfather, I don't think he finished high school actually, but he was a really, really sharp guy. And you could call him an engineer, even though he wasn't technically one, because he found ways to solve problems. He would solve problems for himself. He would solve problems for other people. He could fix almost anything. He invented all these interesting things that were purpose-built. He needed a widget or a gazanta to do something, so he'd go and invent it. And he'd make it up and he'd figure out how to make it work. I think that might be where my engineering sort of mindset came from. He was a huge influence on me. Not to say that my dad wasn't. That was my maternal grandfather. Now my father, he was an engineer by trade and education, and he actually went through and solved a number of problems. He holds a number of patents on different things that you see in everyday life, things that he found solutions for just because he wanted to, because he was curious about how things work and wanted to know more about them and to solve for problems that people had in the world. And that's really the fascinating part about being an engineer, is solving those problems and doing those things and figuring out how to make things work. Some of the problems you'll see are very simple. Some of them are much more complicated, but if you can break it down into its essence to something simple, you're an engineer. Give me a problem and I'll solve it. Going back in history, people came up with the idea of having a wheel, making something roll, having a lever that gives you more physical advantage. Block and tackle. What a great advantage that gives you, that ability to lift something with a pulley. those were all developed under that same mindset of creating something and being smart and being thoughtful and applying some science and some knowledge to solving a problem. That's what an engineer is. Hopefully, I've given you a little sense of what an engineer is, what an engineer can do, and maybe you'll give a little thought to whether engineering interests you or whether it's something you'd like to pursue in some way, whether formally with an education or not. Engineering has a number of different disciplines. You could be an electrical engineer, an industrial engineer, a mechanical engineer, a civil engineer, a computer engineer. All of these things are really useful skills to have. The discipline that you come away with is really neat. And the one thing I'll tell you is if you get an education in engineering, one of the coolest things is they help you to think about how to solve problems. They give you other tools in your toolbox to help you to solve problems. So when you look at it, you go, oh, I know how to do this. The book may be helpful because it has a formula in it. The book may be helpful because it teaches you sort of, how you do constraints around something. But how you approach the problem and how you solve it, that's up to you. And what they're giving you is more tools to help you solve these problems. So the problems get more sophisticated, but the tools are there to help you. Think about when they went to the moon. The science that went into creating a rocket that was able to leave Earth's atmosphere and blast someone off and actually send someone on a trajectory to the moon with enough fuel to be able to get there meant that you had to use the gravity between the Earth and the moon to help propel you around to make it easier and then to send you back to Earth. And then there was a large amount of mathematics that went into how to create the trajectories and the other things to get people back. And I hope that gives you a little sense of what engineering is, sort of in a nutshell. And remember, if we can dream it, we can always do it.
What's your point, David?